What paranormal activities have you witnessed? When I was 3, I told my parents that my great-grandmother came to me in a dream and said her feet didn't hurt anymore. I think she had problems due to diabetes or something. She had died that night. They received the call shortly after I told them. Not paranormal, but a spooky coincidence. My mum confessed that my imaginary friend taught me to read and they were very freaked out about it. Thanks, Duncan. I have no memory of you whatsoever and have no idea where I got the name Duncan from, but I still enjoy reading, so I appreciate the lessons. One time I woke up in the middle of the night and I checked my phone to see the time, and then as I was about to lay down and close my eyes, I checked in front of me and a huge tall humanoid shadow figure was standing there blocking the view of a broken wall clock, and I just started panicking, and it still was there after many seconds, and eventually it just disappeared after I looked away from it for a second. At least once every couple of years, I'll be walking around the apartment at night, when it's dark, but I can still see enough to get around, and I'll have some shadow figure type thing suddenly come out of nowhere and get right up in my face, so close that I can feel like I'm breathing on it. It disappears immediately after. I used to have a recurring nightmare about skinny tall man in a trench coat slowly walking towards me. Had his creepy cold face burned into my brain. Pretty common stuff. Years and years later I was coming home from college, called the elevator, doors open, and I almost shit myself. That skinny tall man in a trench coat is looking straight at me, from the mirror. I don't know how a child's brain can predict exactly what they will look like in their youth, but yeah, shit was creepy. A package of corn tortillas literally jumped off the shelf and onto the floor once at a large grocery store right in front of me. They did not slide nor did they fall. There was no one else around. I thought it was a sign to make enchiladas or something, but it was also quite frightening. When I was a teenager, me and some friends were using a Ouija board and nothing was happening. We took a break, moved on to other things like telling dirty jokes and listening to music. An hour or so later, 3 of us are sitting in my friend's bedroom talking, and the board is still on the table in the middle of the room, when all of a sudden the planchette flies off the board and lands on the floor. Just like someone had quickly swatted at it with their hand. We didn't use it anymore that day. Woke up one night to a loud screeching noise, similar to the screech the Nazgul make in LOTR. The entire room was flashing rapidly in bright colors. My computer turned on for a split second, enough to get the fans rattling, and my computer screen had static on it. The entire ordeal was over in less than a second. I still don't know if it really happened or if my brain was just playing me tricks. One night my dad and a friend of his was standing outside watching the stars. After a bit of watching, what appeared to be a shooting star made a sudden and sharp 90-degree turn and then kept going for about 15 seconds, and then did an equally sharp and sudden 90-degree turn to disappear a few seconds later. We all saw the same thing, but none of us had a good explanation of what we saw. I saw a UFO in Phoenix, AZ one day. Don't get me wrong, I am sure it was man-made or some sort of optical illusion, but it sure was very strange looking. I saw a ghost sleeping in the same bed as my brother at a bed-and breakfast in Gettysburg. Nothing too spooky, but when I'm stargazing and spotting satellites, I've seen them change direction 90 degrees. As someone who believes in the possibility of ghosts, aliens, Bigfoot, Nessie, etc., I can firmly say I have seen Jack's hit. I want to believe. My brother and I had a full conversation as kids with my mom's uncle. He died before we were born, so there's that. I was about 8 or 9, walking out of my parents' room around the middle of the night. Before walking out of the room, an outline of a person was right in front of me, just an outline. I didn't think anything of it and just proceeded to walk through it. I was sick for a week straight. None. I was part of a paranormal investigations team for a while. I went to the haunted places, reviewed the footage, spent a night alone in a Mason's lodge. Debunked everything. I am no longer a part of a paranormal investigations team. Light turned red on a major road. Little me decided to just take off and run across the road. Car comes barreling through the red and I get pulled back, barely missing getting plastered. Wasn't an actual person who pulled me back. I've seen UFOs one time. It was in Texas and I was about to take out the trash. I looked up at the sky and saw some stars shimmer, and then they started to move faster than satellites. After that they moved around and started to show purple and green lights. I think counted at least 4 of them. I think this was freshman year of high school or late in middle school. I was pretty startled, so I ran in the house. I was walking with my friend, and before we got under a bridge, we looked up and saw a bicycle just going over the bridge by itself, without anyone on it. Saw a UFO in broad daylight in the middle of OKC near the capital. Pretty weird. No idea what it was, but not us. There's a womanly ghost that roams our hallway and bathroom. I've seen her 3 times. We call her Tina. When I was 11 I had a cerebral edema. In the hospital I had a dream where my grandparent, who I had never known, he died before I was born, helped my up house. I had fallen skiing. When I looked at my hand, he had left me a tape on it. Several days later, when I was all good and dandy, I went home and my mother showed my old box full of his dad's old cassette tapes, and on it was the one I had dreamed about, Crazy SHT. In my opinion, he helped me recover safely. Saw a BMW driver use a turn signal. Remember when I was 17 seeing lights in the sky outside my house. Whole street was out. They circled together, then moved away, 2 slowly and 1 silly fast. To this day I've not came up with an explanation. A dog died and came to say goodbye. I was babysitting my friend's brother, 3 years old, with that friend. We were 14 years old. Her grandpa just died, but we didn't know yet. At one point, we hear her brother talking, so we go into his room. He is standing in his bed, one of those with bars around it, and is talking to the dark corner of his room. We asks him, "Hey sweetie, did you have a bad dream? Who are you talking to?" He says, "Grandpa." We told him that Grandpa wasn't here, but he could tell him his story the next day. He said no. Grandpa is here. The next day we heard that Grandpa had died. One day I was in my mum's room on the bed looking at something. My mum was behind me on the bed, but not too close to where I was. I was tapped on the shoulder. My mum didn't do it, and there was nobody in the house except for us 2 at the time. When I was a teen, I would spend the weekends at my dad's house. There was a CD player in my room that held 3 CDs, and several times a night it would turn on and it wouldn't ever play music. Just the CD changer would spin. I always felt like someone was watching me in that house. One time I was house sitting while my dad and stepmom were on holiday, and in the middle of the night both the main floor TV and the TV in their locked bedroom turned on, and it was at full volume. Just static. I left and went back to my mom's house because it spooked me out so much. Not me. My little nephew used to sleep over at my grandma's a lot, and would always talk about some weird man sitting in the corner of the room with a weird hat and some big bag filled with letters. When investigating further, my grandparents found that a mailman, one of the previous owners, committed suicide in the shack in their backyard. Story always gives me the creeps when thinking back on it. 1 and 2. Me just moved into new apartment. First night in, unpack a few essentials, laptop. Play computer games for a little, then watch a movie on Netflix. A bit later in the night I hear a voice in my ear say in the most ghastly whisper, say, "Hey it I." I jumped up and looked around me. Nothing there. I'm a bit spooked, so I searched the apartment. Nothing. I was alone. Strangely enough, it only happened to me during my first night there. I no longer live there anymore now. When I was a kid, around 5 years old, I distinctly remember waking up at night to the sound of footsteps entering my bedroom. I thought maybe it was my dad checking on us, but it was dark and the silhouette I saw didn't look like my dad or mom. The figure stopped just by the door, farted, and left. I told my mom and dad, and they both laughed and said I was probably dreaming, but I swear I was not. Maybe it was my dog. Edited to add missing word. Saw will-o-wisps while walking in the forest. A few of us have seen ashtrays fling off a table against the far wall in a room. Ruined a night of D&D. Tons, but most recently my mom kept making the smoke alarm go off at 3 a.m. I told her it wasn't funny and to stop. She did. She died December 27, 2010.